Have you ever wondered what it's like to walk through a town where everyone else has left, but life still clings to the shadows? Empty streets, broken windows, abandoned homes, each carrying the weight of stories long forgotten. And yet, a few stubborn souls refuse to leave. Today, we're exploring the top 10 creepiest abandoned small towns in the US. Places where the past isn't ready to let go, and every corner holds a secret waiting to be discovered. If you're enjoying this journey into the unknown, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Traveling Guide Hub for more real creepy adventures. 1. Centralia, Pennsylvania. Some towns don't die, they just burn from the inside, slowly swallowing themselves. Centralia, Pennsylvania is one of them. I first heard about it from an old neighbor, someone who grew up in the coal region. He spoke about it as if it were a place that had forgotten to die, even when everyone else had moved on. Back in the 1800s, Centralia was a tight-knit mining town full of life. Coal wasn't just fuel, it was community, jobs, and identity. Miners and their families built churches, schools, streets that echoed with laughter. For decades, anthracite coal powered homes and businesses, and the town thrived. But in 1962, everything changed. During what was supposed to be a simple cleanup before Memorial Day, workers set fire to a landfill. They didn't know the ground beneath was riddled with abandoned coal shafts. That fire didn't just burn trash, it sank underground and ignited the coal seams. No one could stop it, and over the years, the town began to vanish in plain sight. It smoldered below, creeping through tunnels and fissures that no one could reach. At first, people thought it was just smoke or bad luck. But over time, strange things became normal. Roads buckled, steam hissed from cracks, carbon monoxide filled the air. The heat became so intense that someone once even fried an egg on the sidewalk near a vent just to prove it. Officials offered buyouts, and most families left, taking memories with them. Houses were demolished, shops went silent, and Centralia slowly erased itself from the map, even losing its zip code. But a stubborn few refused to leave. They stayed in homes defiant against time and danger. Their presence was like embers in a dying fire. Today, only a handful of people live there, among cracked streets, abandoned foundations, and wildflowers growing where front yards once were. Visitors often report eerie sensations, sudden cold breezes in the middle of summer, a strange feeling of being watched, footsteps on cracked pavement when no one else is around. Paranormal enthusiasts whisper about flickering lights in old structures or sounds too deliberate to be the wind. Some describe a heavy, uncomfortable feeling that rises with the sulfur in the air, as if the land itself remembers every goodbye. Walking through Centralia today feels like stepping into a photograph frozen in a half-remembered dream, a place caught between what was and what should have been. Standing on that cracked earth, listening to silence that feels almost too loud, you can't help but wonder, would you stay in a town that refuses to die even when the world tells you to? 2. Whittier, Alaska. Some towns are alive, but only inside one building. And in Whittier, Alaska, the rest of the town seems to have disappeared into the fjord and mountains. I first heard about it from a friend who traveled up north. He couldn't believe what he saw.
A town where almost everyone lives in the same place, inside a single building called the Baggage Towers. Whittier was founded during World War II as a military port and supply town. It sits at the end of a long fjord, surrounded by mountains and ice. Access is mostly through a single tunnel, carved straight through rock. Its location made it strategic for shipping, but the harsh weather and isolation kept the population small. Over the decades, many people left, leaving Whittier almost deserted, except for those who refused to leave the cold, stormy beauty of this remote place. Walking through Whittier today is like stepping into a surreal experiment. One building houses nearly all of the town's residents. Apartments, grocery stores, a post office, even a small school. Outside, snow and rain lash against narrow streets. The mountains press down so close it feels like they're watching. Visitors and residents often speak of strange feelings here. Sudden chills, even in summer. A sense of isolation so thick it feels almost physical. Lights flicker without explanation. Some say they've heard footsteps in empty corridors, or doors closing softly on their own. Others describe a heavy, oppressive quiet that wraps around you, as if the building itself is alive, holding its breath. Life in Whittier is a balance between comfort and unease. Inside the Baggage Towers, people live normal lives, but outside, nature and solitude create a tension you can't shake. Every storm that roars through the fjord reminds you how fragile human presence really is here. Walking through this town, you feel the thin line between civilization and wilderness. It's a place where community and isolation collide, where life persists in defiance of the mountains and fjord. And standing in the middle of it all, you have to ask yourself, would you live in a town where almost everyone else has left, just to stay alive in the shadow of the mountains?
3. Cairo, Illinois. Some towns were once full of life, but now Cairo, Illinois feels like it's holding its breath. I first learned about it from a travel writer who had driven through southern Illinois. He said it was strange, a town where almost every building seemed empty, yet the echoes of the past still lingered in the streets. Cairo was founded in the 1800s at the confluence of the Mississippi and Ohio rivers. Its location made it a crucial port and trade hub. During the Civil War, it was a military stronghold. Later, steamboats and railroads brought prosperity. The streets were bustling, businesses thrived, families built communities that felt permanent. But over time, the town began to decline. Floods, economic shifts, and racial tensions drove people away. Factories closed, homes were abandoned. By the late 20th century, what remained were empty streets, crumbling buildings, and the faint scent of a town that once was alive. Yet, a few residents still call Cairo home, stubborn souls who refuse to leave the silence behind. Walking through Cairo today feels like stepping into a forgotten photograph. Buildings lean and crack, storefronts are shuttered. The Mississippi winds whistle through empty alleys, carrying a chill that sinks into your bones. And sometimes, even the fog seems to move with a life of its own. Visitors often report strange sensations, sudden cold drafts, the feeling of being watched, footsteps echoing where no one is. Some say they've glimpsed shadows moving behind broken windows or heard the distant creak of doors that shouldn't open. Others describe a heavy, oppressive silence that wraps around you, as if the town itself remembers every life that once moved through these streets. Walking these streets, you feel the thin line between life and abandonment.
Cairo is alive only in memory, but memory is powerful. And standing there, surrounded by the quiet, you have to ask yourself, would you stay in a town haunted by its own history, even when everyone else has gone?
4. Monowi, Nebraska. Some towns are almost invisible, yet still alive. Monowi, Nebraska is one of them. I first heard about it from a documentary on America's smallest towns. The narrator said something that stuck with me. A town with the population of just one person. One person keeping the story of an entire town alive. Monowi was founded in the late 1800s as a small farming community. It grew around a railroad line and a few local businesses. A general store, a tavern, homes where families raised their children. For decades, it was a typical Midwestern town. Children played in the streets, neighbors waved from porches. Life moved at a simple, steady pace. But over the years, people moved away in search of work and opportunity. Schools closed, shops shuttered, houses fell into disrepair. By the 21st century, Monowi had only one resident left, Elsie Eiler, the town's mayor, librarian, and caretaker, all in one. She runs the library, maintains the roads, files the town's annual taxes, a living reminder of a town that refuses to vanish completely. Walking through Monowi today is surreal. Empty streets stretch for blocks. Abandoned homes lean in silence, their windows staring like empty eyes. The old tavern sits closed. Wildflowers and weeds grow where children once played. Visitors often describe a strange feeling, a mix of calm and eerie isolation. Some say they've heard faint creaking from abandoned buildings or whispers of wind that sound almost like voices. And sometimes, even the town itself feels alive, remembering, watching. Life in Monowi is quiet, but there's something alive in the stillness. The air feels heavy with history, with memories of laughter, work, and community that once filled these streets. Even in solitude, the town seems to watch, remembering all who lived and left behind its quiet skeleton. Walking here, you understand how fragile life can be and how resilient memory is. Monowi may have only one person left, but it carries the heartbeat of an entire town. And standing there, surrounded by empty streets and quiet buildings, you have to ask yourself, would you stay in a town where you are the last person alive just to keep its story from being forgotten?
5. Picher, Oklahoma. Some towns rise and then fall in the most unexpected ways. Picher, Oklahoma is one of them. I first heard about it while researching forgotten places. Someone said it wasn't just abandoned, it was poisoned. Picher began as a booming mining town in northeastern Oklahoma. Lead and zinc were discovered there in the early 1900s. Thousands of miners and their families arrived chasing prosperity and steady work. By the 1920s, it was a thriving community. Saloons, homes, schools lined busy streets. Life seemed full of promise. But beneath that promise, danger was growing. Decades of mining left giant piles of toxic waste called chat. These gray mounds rose like silent tombstones. The soil, the water, the air all became contaminated with heavy metals that no one could see. Over time, health problems began to appear. Children suffered from lead poisoning. Groundwater became poisonous. The land became unstable as mine shafts hollowed out the earth beneath homes and roads. In 1983, the EPA declared Picher a Superfund site, a place too toxic to ignore. By the late 2000s, most residents had left. Many accepted government buyouts and moved away. In May 2008, a devastating tornado tore through the town, destroying homes and hastening the exodus. Schools closed, streets stood empty, shops shut for the final time. Walking through Picher today, it feels like a world frozen between memory and collapse. Giant chat piles rise in every direction. Empty foundations mark where homes once stood. The wind whistles through crumbling buildings, carrying a metallic scent that chills the skin. Some explorers speak of eerie silence, so heavy it feels alive. Others describe footsteps that don't match their own, or the unsettling sensation that the ground beneath them could give way at any moment. And sometimes it feels like the town itself is remembering, watching. Every cracked wall, rusted sign, toppled fence whispers about lives lived here and left behind. Walking through Picher's skeletal remains, you realize how fragile life can be, how quickly dreams and entire communities can turn to dust. And standing there, surrounded by empty streets and toxic hills, you have to ask yourself, would you stay in a town poisoned by its own boom just to watch it fade into nothing?
6. Goldfield, Nevada. Some towns shine bright and then burn out in silence. Goldfield, Nevada is one of them. I first heard about it while reading about America's legendary mining towns. Someone said it was once the largest city in Nevada, and now it feels like a town caught between past glory and quiet decay. Gold was discovered here in 1902, and within just a few years, thousands of people flooded into the desert hills. By 1906, Goldfield's population had surged to around 20,000. It was the heart of Nevada's gold boom. Saloons, banks, newspapers, railroads, all thriving under the promise of easy wealth. But gold, like luck, can be fleeting. By 1910, the mines began to dry up. People started leaving. Then a massive flood in 1913 damaged whole blocks of the town. And in 1923, a devastating fire ripped through Main Street, destroying scores of buildings. After that, the boom was gone, and with it, the crowds that once filled the dusty streets. Today, Goldfield isn't abandoned. A few hundred people still live here. It's quiet, but not empty. The town is still the county seat of Esmeralda County. A handful of historic structures remain standing, like the old courthouse and the massive Goldfield Hotel, which hasn't hosted guests since the 1940s. Walking down Crook Street today feels like stepping into a sepia photograph. Dust swirls in the desert wind, wooden facades sag, boarded-up windows stare like hollow eyes. Some say the hotel is haunted, like the ghosts of miners and travelers still wander its empty halls, looking for the fortune they never found. Visitors often report eerie moments, a sudden chill in the air, silence so heavy it feels alive, footsteps on a wooden porch even when no one is there, a distant creak from an old roof beam, or the whisper of wind through broken glass, sounding almost like a voice. And sometimes it feels like the town itself remembers watching. Life in Goldfield today is quiet, but not lifeless. A few locals keep the town alive. A bar still pours drinks in a century-old saloon. The courthouse still sees business. And every August, the community comes together for a festival, honoring the town's history and stubborn spirit. Walking through Goldfield's empty avenues, you can almost hear the echo of laughter, the clink of gold pans, of a world that once believed its own myth. And standing there, surrounded by fading signs of fortune and decay, you have to ask yourself, would you choose to live in a town where the ghosts of the past still linger just to keep its story alive?
7. Terlingua, Texas. Some towns exist on the edge of the world. Terlingua, Texas is one of them. I first heard about it from a traveler who had driven through the Chihuahuan Desert. He said it was strange, a town that thrived, died, and now lingers, half alive, half forgotten. Terlingua was founded in the 1880s as a mining town. Mercury, or quicksilver, was discovered nearby. Soon, miners and their families arrived in droves. By the early 1900s, the town was bustling. Saloons, general stores, schools. The streets were full of life and energy. It was a desert boom town, wild, promising. But the wealth didn't last. By the 1940s, the mercury mines had mostly closed. People left, searching for new opportunities. Buildings fell into disrepair, streets emptied, and slowly, the desert began reclaiming the town. Walking through Terlingua today is like stepping into a ghost story frozen in time. Crumbling adobe walls, rusted machinery, desert plants pushing through cracked streets. The silence here is profound, heavy, almost alive. Some visitors say they hear footsteps echoing where no one walks, or doors creaking on their own, as if the wind itself is alive. Locals tell stories too. Flickering lights in abandoned buildings, strange shadows at sunset, an unshakable feeling of being watched even when you are completely alone. And sometimes it feels like the town itself is remembering its wild past, the lives of those who came and went. Yet, Terlingua is not entirely dead. A small community remains, artists, wanderers, and those drawn to the desert's quiet beauty. Festivals still bring life to the streets. Tourists wander its ruins, capturing photos and stories. And the desert wind, always present, whispers secrets of what Terlingua once was and what it still might be. Walking through Terlingua, you feel the thin line between memory and abandonment, between life and decay. And standing there, among the ruins, the desert, and the fading echoes of miners' lives, you have to ask yourself, would you choose to live in a town that refuses to fully die just to keep its story alive?
8. Amboy, California. Some towns live, and some towns just survive in memory. Amboy, California is one of the latter. I first heard about it from a road trip video about Route 66. They said it was a place frozen in time, a town where the desert swallows streets, but somehow life still lingers. Amboy was founded in the early 1900s as a mining and railroad town. Its location on historic Route 66 made it a bustling stop for travelers, gas stations, and diners. The town thrived for decades, serving miners, tourists, and anyone passing through the Mojave Desert. But over time, the traffic faded. Interstates bypassed the town, mines closed, shops and homes were abandoned. By the late 20th century, only a handful of people remained. The once lively streets were now cracked and empty, with the desert pressing in on every side. Walking through Amboy today feels like stepping into a post-apocalyptic movie. Rusted cars sit under the hot sun, signs tilt over empty streets, gas pumps frozen in time. Visitors often report an eerie silence, so heavy it feels alive. Footsteps seem to echo, even when no one is there. And sometimes, you swear you hear the faint rattle of an old engine, as if someone is still driving through the desert, decades too late. Locals and explorers tell stories of strange moments. Flickering lights at the old motel, shadows that move against the walls even when the building is empty. A sudden chill under the desert sun, and that feeling
that the town is watching, remembering everyone who passed through. Yet Amboy is not completely dead. A few stubborn residents remain. They keep the town alive, maintain the iconic Roy's Motel and Cafe, and welcome travelers who want to glimpse history frozen in the desert. Even in isolation, the town has a heartbeat, quiet but persistent. Walking through Amboy's sun-baked streets, you realize how fragile life is and how memory can linger longer than people. And standing there, surrounded by dust, ruins, and echoes of travelers long gone, you have to ask yourself, would you stay in a town where the desert swallows everything just to keep its story alive? 9. Chloride, Arizona. Some towns survive, but only just. Chloride, Arizona is one of them. I first heard about it while reading about Arizona's ghost towns. They said it was a place that time forgot, where the desert reclaims everything, yet the town still stubbornly clings to life. Chloride was founded in the 1880s as a silver mining town. Mines sprouted up, attracting families, workers, and merchants. At its peak, it was a lively town. Schools, saloons, shops lining dusty streets. The silver boom brought people chasing wealth and a chance at a better life. But the mines didn't last. By the mid-20th century, ore ran out. Families left, buildings decayed, streets emptied. By the late 1960s, most of Chloride was abandoned. Yet a few residents refused to leave, keeping the town alive in the middle of the desert. Walking through Chloride today feels like stepping into a faded photograph. Wooden storefronts lean in the sun. Rusted mining equipment stands as silent monuments. The wind whistles across empty streets, carrying dust and echoes of the past. Visitors often describe an unsettling feeling, like someone is watching. Footsteps seem to follow you even when you're alone, and sometimes you swear you hear the faint movement in the shadows, though no one is there. Locals tell stories of strange occurrences. Lights flicker in empty buildings, doors open and close on their own. Even the desert heat, somehow oppressive, adding to the feeling that the town remembers everyone who lived here. And sometimes it feels like Chloride itself is alive, holding on to its history, watching over the desert. Yet life persists. A few stubborn souls remain. They maintain the town, welcome curious travelers, and remind everyone that even abandoned places can carry stories, stories that refuse to die. Walking through Chloride's dusty streets, you realize how fragile life can be and how resilient memory is. And standing there, surrounded by dust, ruins, and echoes of travelers long gone, you have to ask yourself, would you stay in a town where the desert itself seems alive, just to keep its story from fading?
10. Jerome, Arizona. Some towns cling to the edge of a cliff, literally. Jerome, Arizona is one of them. I first heard about it from a travel blog that called it the ghost town with a heartbeat. They said it was built on a mountainside, and somehow, even after decades of decline, it still refuses to disappear. Jerome was founded in 1876 as a copper mining town. At its peak, thousands of miners and their families lived here. Shops, saloons, homes crowded the mountainside, clinging precariously to steep streets. The town thrived for decades, copper flowing, money changing hands, life bustling on the cliffs. But mining is never forever. By the 1950s, the copper veins ran out.
Families moved away, businesses closed, buildings decayed. Jerome became a ghost town, yet a few residents stayed, defying both gravity and time. Walking through Jerome today feels like stepping into a surreal painting. Steep streets wind past crumbling buildings. Balconies lean over sheer drops. The air smells of dust, earth, and history. Visitors often describe a strange sensation, as if the town itself is alive. Footsteps echo where no one walks, doors creak in empty shops, shadows shift when you least expect them. Locals tell stories too. Lights flicker in abandoned buildings. Sometimes voices are heard where no one stands. A sudden chill drifts down the streets, even in the heat of the Arizona sun. And sometimes it feels like Jerome is watching, remembering everyone who dared to call this cliffside home. Yet life persists. Artists, shopkeepers, and a few brave residents keep Jerome alive. Festivals bring the streets to life. Tourists wander historic buildings. The town's heartbeat is faint, but it is still there. Defying the odds, defying the cliff, defying time itself. Walking through Jerome's steep streets, you realize how fragile life can be, and how determination and memory can hold a town together. And standing there, surrounded by ruins, shadows, and echoes of miners' lives, you have to ask yourself, would you live on the edge, knowing the past is never truly gone? And that concludes our journey through the top 10 creepiest abandoned small towns in the U.S., where life lingers in the shadows, memories cling to cracked streets, and the past refuses to fade. These towns remind us that even in silence, stories persist, whispers remain, and echoes of life still haunt the corners of forgotten places. If you felt the chill, the curiosity, or the wonder of these abandoned streets, make sure to like the video, subscribe to Traveling Guide Hub, and leave a comment telling us which town would you dare to visit first.